Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Thursday, September 16th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Tulsa game is in 2 days, the game against Michigan in 72 days. We have spent a lot of time this week talking about the Ohio State defense for obvious reasons. But today I wanted it a little equal time for the Buckeye offense. That offense was not perfect against Oregon, but it was pretty good overall. My guest today is Buckeye Scoop's X's and O's guru, Ross Fulton. He's been a very popular figure on our Ask the Insiders board this week as people try to make sense of what the heck they just saw last weekend. Ross, thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here, Tom.
So sometimes I feel like we can just dive right into some of these conversations, and other times it feels like I need to have you, kind of slow down and define some terms for people so that these conversations make more sense. They kind of understand what you're talking about before you start talking about it. So this is one of those times. Please explain what an overhang defender is and why that can matter for an offense.
Yeah. So an overhang defender is just a defender that's overhanging the box. So he's outside of the offensive tackle, but in a position where he can apply himself against the run. And so there frankly may not be anything more important to both how a defense is structured and how an offense is structured than where are your overhangs and how do you deal with them?
So on Saturday, what was Oregon doing with an overhang defender, or what was Ohio State not doing with Oregon's overhang defender that created some issues?
Yeah. Oregon was essentially cheating their overhang defenders against the run, especially on first down. And so again, those are guys who, if you're looking at Ohio State's typical 11 personnel formation with a slot receiver, so you have two receivers to the side. The guy that's ostensibly responsible for the over the slot receiver was cheating, or even more so blitzing into the box and very aggressively playing run action. And so that was giving them a +1, or one more defender than the offense can block. And when you combine that together with Oregon was doing a bunch of stemming and stunting with their odd fronts and slanting, that caused a lot of what are called a free hitter, which just means a guy that's not blocked within the scheme.
Now, Ohio State has 5 offensive linemen there.
Yep.
If Oregon's rushing 4 defensive linemen and one guy, the corner, for example, coming off that slot receiver, it seems like math would say, okay, 5 on 5, everyone should have a blocker. This should work out. So explain why, explain slanting and why that maybe takes people, or overloading, and why that takes people out of position and creates that numerical mismatch.
Well, you also have to take into account the 2 linebackers, right? So Ohio State generally has 5 offensive linemen plus the tight end in the blocking structure. So that's 6. So Oregon was basically playing a 3-3, which is 6 guys right there, and then bringing that 7th overhang into the box or against the run. So now you got 7. So you got 6 versus 7. So you got and then to compound that, as I was saying, and probably the most memorable example is on the Mayan Williams, the 4th down stop where he was hit in the backfield by Penei Sewell. Oregon again was slanting. So like a lot of what Ohio State does, particularly on their zone runs, is based on combination blocks. And, they have to identify, who's covered, who's uncovered, work together to get to who goes to who. And so, like on that play, for instance, Oregon slanted back. And so Luke Whippler picked up the slanting defensive tackle, which gave Thayer Munford a really difficult block to try to essentially like squeeze by that slant to get over to Sewell, who was, protected by that defensive tackle. So he couldn't secure that block. And so, in theory, in hindsight, and Ryan Day discussed this some in his weekly presser earlier this week, which is, they just had some identification issues with, like, ideally you would have Mumford could have picked that guy up. Whippler could have came up and met Sewell. But, to me, that's sort of a secondary issue. And again, the main thing is like when you're outnumbered, it's very difficult because then it's basically on the running back to make a guy miss, in the backfield. And that, the offensive line can't block someone that they're not assigned to block.
So are those issues, I mean, the issues there with Whippler going over and blocking that guy, and Munford kind of getting stuck there. Is that a blocking scheme issue? Is that a center who's making his second career start, maybe not, having seen this before? Like, what do you attribute that to?
It's more of a blocking identification issue, right? And so I think Day talked about this, like, it's the second game of the year. They've spent a lot of time going against Ohio State's 4 down front. They're now playing an odd front with 3 down linemen that was, again, like stemming, jumping around, stunting. Again, they basically, it's essentially like a misassignment in some ways. I just would say that they had a little difficulty identifying who was responsible for the defensive lineman and who needed to come up off to pick up the linebacker, at least early in the game. I think we do need to divide up how the run game performed into like the first half and the second half, because it was much better in the second half.
The production from the running backs was not huge on the ground. I mean, I think the long for Mayan Williams was 21, 22 yards. Long for Travion Henderson was like 11. Was that the offensive line not getting a push? Was that the guys being, outnumbered and you just mathematically didn't work out? Was it the running backs not being able to get through the second level? Like, what was it to you that kept the Ohio State running game from being able to hit those explosive plays that you saw in week 1?
I think it was primarily being outnumbered at the point of attack and Oregon being very run focused. I thought, sometimes you're, tip your cap to your opponent. I thought the Oregon tackled very well also at the second and third levels. But, I think that some of it was just inconsistency, again, with just having free hitters who could, make the tackle before really you get like into the secondary, which is, really when you create explosive runs is when you get a running back one-on-one with a safety or a corner.
One of the things that maybe helped create some of those numbers issues for Ohio State was normally you have the quarterback in the running game as a +1 on a lot of those read plays you've seen. I mean, you've seen them for a million years. Saturday, there were a couple times when it was like, if CJ Stroud keeps this, CJ Stroud is probably still running. And CJ Stroud never really seemed to keep it. There were a lot of plays where it seemed like there was a read there and he either wasn't making the right read, or more likely this was not a play that was called as a read play. It was just a straight handoff. How big, first of all, why does that make a big difference? And second of all, how would that impact the team if he is able to do that in the future?
So I would say, I do not think that a single run on Saturday was a called read play. When I rewatched, I don't think they even called, it didn't even look like he was reading. And so there's a couple of things to unpack. So obviously, just like at a basic level, again, you can block someone, the defense always outnumbers the offense because the guy with the ball can't block one defender. So they always can have 11 on 10. And so, one way you can block a guy or you can read him. And so, with a read option play, if you go back to our 6 versus 7 example, if the quarterback is reading that 7th defender, he's now effectively blocked because you can make him wrong either way. Now, I will say, even though it's tricky, right? Because Justin Fields is a great runner. And because of that, he got a lot of respect, even though they didn't run a lot of read plays either. Ryan Day, unlike Meyer, it's a different, it's a spread offense, but it's a different offense. They run a lot more of, what I call mid zone or wide zone that have wider, pass for the running back. And those plays just aren't as much combined with reads. So there's not a ton. They still do run occasionally. They can still run a read. But so if you're not going to read, and that guy's going to cheat, the way you have to deal with it is you have to throw those bubble screens or, reliefs, which they've been doing a decent amount of, or post snap run pass options, which they did a little bit of, and they're probably going to need to do more if they're not going to involve Stroud in the run game.
Day was very, very supportive of Stroud on Tuesday when we talked to him. It was, someone asked him about, have you considered bringing in another quarterback? And it was like he couldn't say no fast enough. It was like very, very protective of Stroud and really wanted to make sure everyone understood he's doing a really good job. and when he was asked about running, he gave the example of a play where Stroud really put his shoulder down and kind of ran through a defender and ended up getting called back on a holding penalty. But, he's tough in the running game and all. So he couldn't say enough nice things about Stroud. And Stroud has played very well. I mean, certainly there have probably been some nerves. It seems like in the first half, balls are kind of sailing, and that might just be first, second start kind of jitters for a young quarterback. One thing you identified, though, is he's really locking on to targets at times. So can you explain why that matters? And, how do you fix that? Is that just this is a second start thing, or is that something you've got to, drill out of a quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, it matters, especially if you're facing a zone defense. If you lock onto a target, the defensive back can read your eyes, particularly as safety in the middle of the field. If you want to throw between the hash marks and, break up the play, intercept it, a variety of bad outcomes. I think it's just something that you work on and drill out of him. I personally think he improved as the game went on. I think there's some jitters. I mean, from a bigger picture, he's had a much tougher hand than Justin Fields did by comparison from when his first two starts which were against pretty lackluster at best competition and a great defense and J.K. Dobbins in the backfield. So, Ohio State's basically asking Stroud to carry them. And I personally agree with Ryan Day. I think it'd be crazy to talk about like playing another quarterback right now. I mean, the guy just threw for like 450 yards. But it's asking a lot of a guy in his second start to carry you and overcome a bad defense. And at times, especially in the first half, an inconsistent run game. I mean, I will say I do think that they, whether it was panicking a little bit, being down, or just like, bad mojo from the first half, I frankly think they could have ran the ball more in the second half. They really settled in. They went to running what I call duo instead of, so there's two basic concepts they use, which is zone, which is, we've talked about zone blocking. Duo is basically double team down blocks. And once they did that, I mean, the offensive line continually washed Oregon out and it took away a lot of their slanting. And, there was a couple of drives there, like the one where they had to punt back to Oregon, the second to last drive, they didn't run it a single time. I thought they were running the ball pretty well by the end and probably should have gone back to that, which would have taken a little pressure off of Stroud. And so, there's things that we can talk about, locking on receivers, he needs to improve. I think he needs to be a little more assertive and just take off and run sometimes on scrambles. I think he could, sometimes there's wide open check downs that he should take and take what's there. But, I think all things considered, he's improving. And I think as he gets, hopefully, or ideally for him, a couple games under his belt against, teams where they can build up a comfortable lead and he can, not feel like he has to put the pedal to the metal all the time. He can sort of work some of these things out.
I mean, it sounds like you were reasonably impressed with that offensive line in the second half. I know that they were, they really didn't have many issues in pass pro. Like Oregon didn't get to Stroud until last 5 minutes of the game, and they got 2 sacks in the last 5 minutes when it was kind of the final desperate moments. But I mean, overall, watching the line, did you, is this a line that is living up to the preseason billing of this is at least one of the best in the Big Ten, if not one of the best in the nation? Or do they still have some sort of gelling to do as a line in your eyes?
I think so. I mean, I think there's maybe a little bit of gelling on some of those IDing things and working together. I think the right side of the offensive line, missed, which are both first year starters, missed some things in terms of, some of those combination blocks, getting off the second level. Obviously, those false starts on DeJuan Jones hurt. I mean, those are going to be some big plays out of tempo, and they were kind of strange false starts, to be honest. A couple of them were pretty questionable. But overall, I don't have any concerns about the offensive line. I mean, there's not situations where those guys are getting beat when they're directly engaged with people. So, it's more of a scheme and identification issue.
All right. And I'm going to ask you the same basic thing I did yesterday about the defense. If they put you in charge, what would you change about the Ohio State offense right now?
I think they're going to need to use more RPOs. I do think they should involve Stroud a little bit in the run game to let people know that's a thing so that defenses have to prepare for it, and include more post-snap RPOs as well to protect the backside of their run plays. And I mean, their offensive line's so big that I think duo is a great play for them. And I think that they should rely on that as much as they rely on wide zone. But, and I think these are all things to clean up. I think Stroud, one thing he really did show is he's very good on that across the field, deep out to Chris Olave. And like the amount of cushion that corners have to give him, I mean, that throw is there. So, keep hitting that on first down. Those kind of things eventually did force Oregon to stop cheating so much, which helps the run game. So I think it's just building on some of those things. And obviously you got to get the ball in the end zone then.
This was probably a little bit more of an uplifting show than yesterday's was for the listening audience. So Ross, thank you again for joining me. I know these are always some of our most popular shows. I always look forward to these, get to learn a little something and, feel a little smarter. Every once in a while you'll say something and it's like, oh, I said that earlier. I must've been right. That's good. Look at me. How about that? So Ross, thank you again for joining me.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
And you can find Ross and our rest of our fantastic team of insiders on our Ask the Insider Sport at BuckeyeScoop.com. We are there answering questions, talking about all the exciting happenings of this week. There's a lot to talk about. We will have our final interview with Ryan Day before the Tulsa game. That'll be our lightning round around noon today. We'll have that streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. So what you want to do if you want to hear from Ryan Day today and hear from him live is just hit the little bell on YouTube or go to click on if you're watching on YouTube, click on the little Buckeye Scoop logo at the end of this video and you will get subscribed to our channel. And what will happen then is you get notified as soon as we go live. So you get to watch the Ryan Day press conference live. You'll get notified every time we post a new podcast, every time we post a new player or coach interview, pregame shows, postgame shows. We're going to have all that stuff on Saturday. There's going to be a whole lot to talk about inside Ohio Stadium on Saturday. And you will get all of it. And it's all free at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. Just subscribe and then you'll get access to all of that stuff as soon as it goes up. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.